Deng dengia, deng dengia, deng dengi denki dengia.
In District 404, the sound of gongs and drums filled the air, creating a lively atmosphere. Colonel Chu and the others were dressed in formal attire, standing in neat rows, gazing at the sky, awaiting the arrival of the aliens. Old Chu, is it true that Zhao Yu was taken from Earth? Engineer Yang asked quietly, standing beside Colonel Chu. Colonel Chu tilted his head slightly and replied, I had someone investigate people who had been missing for nearly a decade, and we did find someone named Zhao Yu. He went missing 5 years and 10 months ago, and his appearance matches the projection. What about Zhang Yuxia and her supervisor? No trace of them. Perhaps no one reported them when they went missing. Colonel Chu shook his head and said, Zhao Yu is an orphan, and his disappearance was reported by his colleagues, not his family. It's likely that the others who were taken were also orphans. Privately, they had carefully studied the matter and concluded that the real aliens probably looked different from the people on Earth. And individuals like Zhao Yu, who had revealed themselves, were most likely taken by the aliens from Earth several years ago. However, there's something suspicious. Zhang Yuxia seems to have never been to Earth, yet she's not young. The experts in the group came up with 2 conclusions. First, the aliens had been on the moon for several decades, and Zhang Yuxia was abducted when she was young. Second, the aliens had been on Earth for over 5 years, and Zhang Yuxia's memories had been wiped out. Sure, they're here. At that moment, someone beside them whispered as a reminder. Both of them quickly looked up. In the sky, a group of small black dots appeared. As those dots grew larger and larger, the sound of gongs gradually stopped. Everyone stared wide-eyed, their breathing becoming rapid. Colonel Chu's eyes filled with astonishment, but he quickly regained his composure and said, Don't stop. Keep playing the music. The atmosphere team woke up and continued to play the gongs and drums, but their trembling legs revealed their fear. 120 spaceships filled the entire sky, obscuring the sunlight on the ground even in broad daylight. The smallest of these ships measured over 100 meters, and the largest reached tens of thousands of meters, resembling small mountains. And about 60 of these enormous ships hovered in midair, presenting a shocking sight. So these are the alien spaceships? They're so magnificent. Some people were deeply moved, unable to contain their emotions. Colonel Chu also had some doubts. Weren't the alien ships damaged? Could it be that the damaged ones were the interstellar ships capable of crossing star systems? On the ground, there was an airport that could accommodate 10 planes, and the 10 dispatchers looked bewildered. With so many ships, which one should we let land? Even such a large airport could only accommodate the smallest type of flying spaceship. Fortunately, the aliens did not make things difficult for them. 60 gigantic warships stopped at a height of 1 kilometer from the ground, while the remaining ships stopped 100 meters above the ground. The smaller ships have no exhaust ports at the bottom. They probably use magnetic levitation instead of engine to work. The larger ones have exhaust ports, so they might be nuclear-powered ships. Do you see that medium-sized ship? The cannons that it carries are hundreds of meters long. Look at that one. The entire hull is covered with cannons. It's terrifying. The members of the expert team couldn't care less and focused their attention on studying the alien ships, occasionally expressing their amazement. Just as the dispatchers were anxious about how to communicate and land with the aliens, a faint halo emanated from the bottom of a 100-meter-long disc-shaped spacecraft, reaching down to the ground. What is that? Colonel Chu was puzzled, not understanding the purpose of the halo. In the next second, his eyes widened. Within the halo, a figure descended from the sky, like a celestial being, radiating a hazy light and slowly landing. What? Colonel Chu and Engineer Yang exchanged a glance, both seeing the shock in each other's eyes. This kind of technology was beyond anything they had ever heard of. Before everyone could fully process their astonishment, one of the 60 warships, measuring tens of thousands of meters in length, opened its bottom hatch.
Swish, swish, swish el astérisque.
One after another, 3-meter-tall steel robots descended from the sky. Robots! And they can fly. And they're armed? Someone with keen eyes exclaimed. The scene descended into chaos. and the originally orderly formation of thousands of people became disheveled. Colonel Chu and the others no longer cared about maintaining the formation. Their gaze was fixated on the heavily armed robots. Thud, thud, thud. Thousands of space combat mechs landed beneath the disc-shaped ship, standing in formation, welcoming Zhao Yu. Only then did people realize that these robots were merely bodyguards, while the leading figure was the figure beneath the disc-shaped spaceship. Under the gaze of the thousands of people present, Zhao Yu descended to the ground from the center of the halo. So powerful. This alien technology is much more advanced than what we imagined. People murmured in private, completely losing the confidence and pride they had gained from witnessing the high-techs that were in District 404. As it turned out, there was absolutely no need to compare the differences between technology on Earth and technology of the aliens. Colonel Chu and the others exchanged glances, suppressing their unease and anxiety, taking the lead in walking towards Zhao Yu. As they moved, the attention of the entire crowd shifted instantly, increasing the pressure on them. Engineer Yang felt very stressed, but, while keeping his composure, he made a signal to the team responsible for creating atmosphere. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The rest of the people couldn't hold back and quickly joined in, shouting, change clothes, thermal exchange clothes. Tens of thousands of people shouted in unison. Zhao Yu was a bit overwhelmed since this was the first time he's seen this many people gathering around for him. But he didn't show it on his face. Following Dasu's teachings before leaving, he remained calm, standing still in his place. Soon, Colonel Chu and the others approached, saying in unison, Mr. Zhao, hello, welcome to Earth. Thomas took the lead and stepped forward, extending his right hand for a handshake. Zhao Yu glanced at him, ignored him, and turned to Colonel Chu, smiling, Mr. Chu, hello, nice to see you again. Upon hearing this, Colonel Chu quickly stepped forward, exchanging pleasantries while extending his hand. This time, Zhao Yu didn't refuse and shook hands with him. Thomas's face stiffened, and he rubbed his hands together, trying to conceal his awkwardness. Although he felt extremely displeased, he had to maintain a smile on his face. After some simple pleasantries between Colonel Chu and Zhao Yu, Colonel Chu spoke up, Mr. Zhao, this is our 404 zone, where all the cutting-edge technology of planet Earth is gathered. Shall one take you on a tour? Sure. Zhao Yu nodded slightly. Colonel Chu promptly extended his hand and said, please. Accompanying Zhao Yu were only 2 robot soldiers, while Colonel Chu had a few influential experts with him. The group began their tour of the 404 zone. Thomas involuntarily followed behind the team, hesitant to leave but unable to do so, feeling increasingly uncomfortable, especially when he saw the 2 robotic warriors behind Zhao Yu. Walking with steady and confident strides, he felt bitter in his heart. Their robots here could only operate some weapons, and they weren't even humanoid. On the other hand, the aliens had already advanced their robot research to such a level. When they reached the rocket area, the staff began their introduction. The experts accompanying Colonel Chu were constantly observing Zhao Yu's reactions. To their surprise, after hearing the introduction, Zhao Yu showed no disdain or contempt. On the contrary, he listened with great interest. How surprising. The experts looked puzzled, not quite understanding. After a while, they finally understood. Zhao Yu's reaction wasn't that of someone looking at advanced technology, but rather, his eyes gleamed as if he had seen some great toys. That was it. The technology on Earth was, to him, like fancy toys you'd see in a store. Was the gap between humans and aliens really this wide? Colonel Chu had originally planned for the experts to give him some cues, but to his surprise, they were as astonished as if they had lost their memory, absorbed in their own surprise. Helpless, Colonel Chu could only force a smile and say, Mr. Zhao, please don't mind. We of Earth can only use these rockets to travel to space. Well, it's not bad. What? Colonel Chu was taken aback. That line wasn't in the script, but the opportunity passed in an instant, leaving him with no time to think. He quickly continued, compared to your spaceship, our rockets seem to lack the fiery exhaust, don't they? Zhao Yu turned his head to glance at the hovering flying saucer and smiled. It's maglev propulsion. It works well within the planet, but not so much in space. This statement contained a great deal of information, bringing joy to Colonel Chu, who eagerly committed it to memory. At the same time, he felt a strong sense of bitterness deep within. As it turned out, the spaceship that they humans wanted so badly were nothing significant to the aliens. Indeed, it was of little importance. The essence of the spaceship lay not in its appearance, but in its propulsion system, which couldn't be easily learned in just a few sentences. Zhao Yu didn't think much of it. He didn't anticipate that the people of Earth would take every word he said so seriously. Not even Uncle Da had considered that. Seeing Zhao Yu being so talkative, Colonel Chu felt relieved. He was worried that Zhao Yu would maintain the same attitude as during the projection, which wouldn't make for a pleasant interaction. The group walked leisurely, and Thomas discreetly slipped away for a while. When they reached the laser weapons area, the staff there casually gave them an introduction. Colonel Chu found this somewhat puzzling. Wasn't Thomas supposed to challenge Zhao Yu to compare laser technology? Taking advantage of Zhao Yu's momentary distraction while listening to the staff's explanation, Colonel Chu turned his head and glanced back. Thomas was nowhere to be seen. Where had he gone? Colonel Chu had worried that something might happen, but as they continued through the laser zone, nothing unexpected occurred. It seemed like Colonel Chu understood something deep down. Thomas must have realized the gap and didn't want to embarrass himself. Without Thomas interfering, Colonel Chu led Zhao Yu on a tour of the entire base, gaining a lot of valuable information. Although this information was insignificant to Zhao Yu, it could save Earth from getting stuck at developing new technologies. Not bad, not bad. One didn't expect Earth to have such impressive development. Zhao Yu exclaimed. If he hadn't visited here, he wouldn't have known that Earth's private technology far surpassed the commercial technology used by the public. Feeling more at ease now, Zhao Yu was far from the apprehension he had when Blue Star discovered him. Even if his identity was exposed, it didn't matter. If anyone dared to have malicious intentions, he could simply make the Blue Moon descend, leaving people with no resources. However, extreme measures were most likely unnecessary. For now, he still needed to accumulate technological points by interacting with the people of Earth. Following Uncle Da's advice, Zhao Yu decided to make the people of Earth believe that he was an extraterrestrial bound to the moon from Earth. He presented himself as a representative for negotiations. As long as you're satisfied, Colonel Chu smiled and suggested, shall we go and eat now? We can chat while we eat. Zhao Yu looked around and suddenly asked, do you have soup dumplings here? All. Colonel Chu was taken aback. The restaurant served exquisite delicacies, the highest quality dishes with various elaborate preparations, flavors, and aromas. But soup dumplings? This seemed out of place. Well, we don't have that prepared, but if you want, one can have someone make them now, Colonel Chu offered. No need. I don't expect you to find authentic soup dumplings in this place that is in the middle of nowhere, Zhao Yu shrugged and said, let's go to Great Xia. One want to have some soup dumplings. He had assumed that Earth would take him in Great Xia, but he never expected to end up in this desolate place. As for how the people of Earth decided to get him to come to this place, he couldn't care less. He came to Earth to see Great Xia. That was all there was to it. Colonel Chu was completely astonished. He never anticipated that Zhao Yu would willingly disclose information related to his identity. He felt a bit anxious and cautiously asked, Mr. Zhao, have you been to Earth before? Zhao Yu openly admitted, one used to be a citizen of Great Xia, but now, not anymore. Just as expected. Just as the experts expected, Zhao Yu was not a native to the moon. The aliens got him there. And not only that, during his stay on the moon, Zhao Yu had successfully climbed to the position of a small leader. This was good news. Although Zhao Yu's current position aligned with the extraterrestrials, having that hometown connection might allow them to approach Zhao Yu for sensitive matters. Great. Then let's go to Great Xia for some soup dumplings. Colonel Chu said joyfully. Then he asked, should we take a plane? Let's take my spaceship. This time, Uncle Da's advice to Zhao Yu was to fully display the fleet's strength. The stronger the fleet, the higher the technological level, and the safer Zhao Yu would be on Earth. In that case, I'll trouble you. Colonel Chu and the others couldn't hide their excitement. Getting to ride in an extraterrestrial spaceship up close meant they could witness many things. 10 minutes later, over 100 warships took off. Thomas, who had been squatting in the restroom, hurriedly walked out and grabbed a staff member, asking, "Where are they?" "They left." The extraterrestrial representative said they wanted to go to Great Xia for soup dumplings and flew away in the spaceship. What? Thomas was completely dumbfounded. He didn't think that they would just ditch him out like this. Colonel Chu and his team were invited by Zhao Yu to board a cruiser loaded with Star Destroyer cannons. "Mr. Zhao Yu, can you make the spaceship invisible when you fly it?" Colonel Chu asked nervously. He added, "We're worried that the early exposure of extraterrestrial civilizations will lead to social instability and riots. Ordinary people aren't mentally prepared to face alien civilizations yet." "Yes, one can the spaceship invisible." Zhao Yu nodded. The main purpose of coming to Earth was to earn technology points and obtain resources from Earth. He wanted to keep a low profile to ensure that there wasn't any trouble while he was here. He glanced at the crowd, many of whom were looking around with curiosity. Zhao Yu smiled faintly and said, "There are quite a few scholars here, right?" "Yes." Colonel Chu nodded somewhat awkwardly. "They don't have any ulterior motives. One can assure you that. They are just very fascinated with alien technology. It's all right. Let them move freely. It will take a few more minutes to reach Great Xia. Let's talk in the meantime," Zhao Yu suggested. Great. Colonel Chu was eager for this. He quickly sent the group of experts to visit the spaceship. After the crowd left, Zhao Yu said, "Before we discuss business, one have two requests." "Please speak," Colonel Chu responded humbly. As long as the requests weren't too excessive, he had the authority to agree. "First, the moon is our base, so you people having satellites taking pictures is kind of impolite." "No problem. After we return, we can bring down all the satellites on the moon," Colonel Chu quickly agreed. This request wasn't demanding at all. Normally, it wouldn't be surprising for a lower civilization like theirs to have surveillance devices knocked down by a higher civilization, especially since Zhao Yu himself brought it up. Zhao Yu nodded and continued, "Second, the blue moon was pushed into orbit around Earth by us, and its ownership belongs to us." "Blue moon," Colonel Chu hesitated. Blue moon was very close to Earth. It would be easy for them to establish a base there, which would be beneficial for their development into space. After a moment, Colonel Chu seemed to understand something and replied, "All right, the ownership of the blue moon belongs to your side." In his view, although Blue Moon was closer to Earth, as Zhao Yu had said, the other party had the ability to push it into Earth's orbit and even into Earth itself. "Good. Since you have no objections to these two minor requests, let's now discuss the matter of a trading port," Zhao Yu said, and Colonel Chu was the first to respond. "Mr. Zhao, if may first ask, what is the purpose of your trade with us?"
Colonel Chu Inquired.
"We need some resources that are available on Earth, but not on the moon," Zhao Yu answered. Hearing this made Colonel Chu very happy. The aliens could have resorted to plundering, but they chose the civilized way of trade. Indeed, extraterrestrial civilizations were truly civilized, as expected. Colonel Chu praised and had some admiration for the extraterrestrial behind Zhao Yu. Through this event, he had even higher expectations for Earth's integration into the cosmic community. If they could establish contact with more powerful extraterrestrial civilizations, perhaps they could really buy some technology from them. Of course, that was a matter for the future. Colonel Chu didn't think much about it and continued, "Mr. Zhao, what products do you plan to trade?" "For now, we intend to export 3 items: holographic touch watches, magnetic levitation cars, and intelligent robots," Zhao Yu explained. Colonel Chu was delighted. The manufacturing of these 3 products involved a wide range of scientific fields, and understanding the technology behind them would greatly enhance the technological level of the Great Xia. The only problem now was to convince Mr. Zhao to establish a factory on Earth. Well, he didn't really need to convince Zhao Yu to do this. Little did Colonel Chu know that it was also Mr. Zhao's intention. After pondering for 2 seconds, Colonel Chu spoke, "Mr. Zhao, may first inquire about how you are going to put a price on your product? I have noticed that the internal currency on Earth is in disarray, and it seems inappropriate to tie my products to any particular nation's currency," Mr. Zhao replied casually. "We are already discussing the proposal for merging currencies and establishing a unified currency. No need for such trouble." Mr. Zhao smiled faintly and said, we can create a currency called Blue Moon Dollar. It will be tied to natural resources on Earth. Colonel Chu's heart skipped a beat. When it came to the issue of currency issuance, he needed permission from higher authorities to make any sort of agreement with the aliens. After all, whoever had control of that power would benefit from it. Are you concerned that we will flood the market with currency and exploit your resources for free? Mr. Zhao proactively voiced Colonel Chu's concerns. I am worried that your currency will depreciate. Colonel Chu's response was subtle, using the example of Zimbabwean dollars. That was the only currency that had experienced hyperinflation. So, tying Blue Moon Dollar to the resources of Earth and our technological products would work. Mr. Zhao chuckled. We can buy your resources with Blue Moon Dollar, and you can buy our products with Blue Moon Dollar. That way, there won't be any issues. Buying products with Blue Moon Dollars, Colonel Chu fell into deep thought once again. The other party's products could be continuously manufactured, but the resources on Earth were limited. Perhaps in the short term, 300 to 500 years, Earth's resources would be inexhaustible, but what about the future? If the extraterrestrials didn't leave and the trade continued, thousands of years later, their descendants would probably have to dig up Colonel Chu's ancestral tomb. But on second thought, 300 to 500 years later, the Great Xia would likely have already expanded into the universe. By then, they could completely develop other planets. Trade was definitely necessary, and the only thing to figure out was how to use the trade to enhance the technological level of the Great Xia. After careful consideration, Colonel Chu spoke. Once these 3 products are released, similar industries on Earth will be bankrupt. Tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of people will face unemployment. If you are willing to establish a factory on Earth, one can represent Earth. A factory? Mr. Zhao feigned surprise and pretended to contemplate. Seeing that the other party did not outright refuse, Colonel Chu immediately seized the opportunity. After all, your production base is far away on the moon, and transportation costs should be high. If you establish a factory on Earth, transportation costs would be almost zero. In addition, one can take charge. We will bear all the initial costs of establishing the factory. Mr. Zhao did not expect that, following Uncle Da's advice to indulge in desires, he would actually obtain even better conditions than he had imagined. The other party was even willing to bear the costs of building the factory. Transferring the production line to Earth is beyond my authority. Please wait a moment while one consult. Mr. Zhao did not rush to accept, but in line with his image, he turned and entered another room. Through the window, Colonel Chu saw the spaceship rapidly ascending and reaching outer space in an instant. What's going on? One of the experts asked, looking confused and perplexed as they observed the situation. Seeing their puzzled expressions, Colonel Chu quickly provided an explanation. Don't worry, everything is fine. Mr. Zhao needed to contact the moon. We are currently experiencing electromagnetic disturbances here on Earth. After waiting for what seemed like half an hour, Mr. Zhao finally emerged from the room. Colonel Chu hurriedly approached him with an expectant look on his face and asked, Mr. Zhao, how did it go? A smile appeared on Mr. Zhao's face as he replied, We can build the factory. That's great news. Colonel Chu couldn't contain his excitement and clenched his fist. He quickly reached out to shake hands with Mr. Zhao and expressed his gratitude. To Colonel Chu, the fact that the extraterrestrial being agreed to establish a factory on Earth meant that Mr. Zhao, as a former citizen of Great Xia, must have contributed significantly to this outcome. This made Mr. Zhao feel a bit embarrassed. He did, in fact, have a casual conversation with Uncle Da about setting up a branch on Blue Moon. Subsequently, both parties discussed various details. They addressed issues such as maintaining a reasonable exchange ratio between Blue Moon currency and Blue Star resources and products. It was important to avoid situations where they would buy a few items while selling thousands of tons of resources, as that would be unfavorable. In addition, they agreed on the exchange rate of Blue Moon Dollar for Earth's resources and the prices for purchasing 3 specific goods, reaching a mutually satisfying range. Finally, as the spaceship began its invisible descent towards the ground, the negotiation came to a formal close, marking the end of the trade talks. The negotiations ended, and Mr. Zhao instructed the spaceship to find an uninhabited location to drop off Colonel Chu and the others. He then led the entire fleet to Blue Moon to begin establishing a branch base. The Blue Moon was a small asteroid with only 50 kilometers in diameter. Right now, it was captured by Earth's gravity and was spinning at an extremely fast speed, making entry and exit inconvenient. Gazing through the window at the tiny celestial body, Mr. Zhao contemplated for a moment before speaking. Uncle Da, is there a way to make it stop? Are you suggesting that we make the tides on the Blue Moon fixed just like the moon?
Uncle da inquired. Yes.
Mr. Zhao nodded. It keeps spinning, and finding a landing spot becomes troublesome. It can be done. We simply need the warships to exert force at these designated locations, gradually depleting Blue Moon's kinetic energy. Uncle Da transmitted a three-dimensional diagram, indicating the spots where the warships should apply force. Without hesitation, Mr. Zhao recalled all the disc-shaped spaceships and ordered them to halt Blue Moon. These ships could make use of the abundant magnetic forces near Blue Star, making them more suitable for the task than nuclear-powered spacecraft. Colonel Chu and the others were dropped off the spaceship, and as they lifted their heads, the sky appeared empty and deserted, evoking a sense of awe. The spaceship's stealth capability is remarkable. Yes, its optical invisibility is incredible. Colonel Chu looked around in astonishment and realized they were outside the capital city. Xiadu this saved them the trouble of rushing back. Leading the group, he entered the city and casually found a telecommunications office to make a phone call. Soon after, several black business vehicles arrived and picked them up. Once they returned to the underground secret base, Colonel Chu recounted his conversation with Mr. Zhao in front of a group of elders. We shall give our full support. We will bear not only the construction costs, but also take care of other aspects, such as advertising and pre-sales at offline stores. As soon as Mr. Zhao sends over the specifications and physical samples of the 3 products, we will immediately notify the Audiovisual Program Administration Bureau to exclusively air advertisements for Blue Moon Technology Group's projection touchwatch, magnetic levitation car, and robots. Colonel Chu nodded and asked, since they are planning to issue Blue Moon currency, how will the public be able to exchange it? One of the elders narrowed his eyes and replied, first, we will acquire some Blue Moon currency from Blue Moon Corporation in exchange for resources. Then, we will convert it into Great Xia currency. The specific exchange ratio will be determined by experts. At this point, the elder paused and continued, Xiao Chu, you have done well in handling this matter. We have already reached an agreement with other regions of Blue Star. We are forming a group called the Earth Federation, allocating the appropriate number of representatives to each region based on their strength. Colonel Chu was taken aback. He never expected the progress to be so rapid. The over 200 sovereign entities had merged overnight. Seemingly aware of his confusion, the elder smiled and said, the pressure from extraterrestrial beings is even greater than we imagined. If it weren't for their arrival, it would have taken us several centuries to unite planet Earth. The Great Xia will now be called the Great Xia District. Within the district, we will have total control. However, when it comes to matters concerning Earth, the decisions will be made by the representatives in the council. Before Colonel Chu could fully digest the information, the elder dropped another bombshell. There will be a position for you in the Earth Federation Council. Leaving the underground base, Colonel Chu felt dazed for quite some time before finally coming to his senses. At that moment, Assistant Wang handed him a document. Is this Mr. Zhao's detailed information? He exclaimed as he took the document and began reading. Zhao Yu, abandoned infant found near the entrance of Chang'an Ninth Orphanage. Educational background, experimental kindergarten, experimental primary school, experimental middle school, Chang'an College of Arts and Sciences. Second-class undergraduate degree, master's degree in electronic commerce. Disappeared around December 29, 2022? After going through the information, Colonel Chu furrowed his brows and asked, is this all? Assistant Wang scratched his head and replied, Zhao Yu didn't participate in many social activities, and he seems to be a nobody in school. Our people visited his previous schools, but the teachers didn't have much impression of him. Colonel Chu continued, does he have any social connections? Any friends? Has he been in a relationship? I don't know. Is this how you do your job? Is this how Yang always taught you? Colonel Chu was getting a little angry and said sternly, this concerns the security of Earth. You need to investigate according to the highest priority level, visiting all his classmates. Assistant Wang felt a bit aggrieved. When Engineer Yang was transferred to the Earth Joint Defense Agency, he took her along, and she became Colonel Chu's subordinate by the way. But now she was receiving such severe criticism. If she had known, she wouldn't have come along. Forget it, you don't need to investigate this matter. Seeing tears welling up in Assistant Wang's eyes, Colonel Chu was speechless for a moment. He didn't expect a professional assistant to be such a crybaby. After dismissing Assistant Wang, Colonel Chu assigned someone else to investigate Zhao Yu. This time, he got straight to the point and explained the importance of this investigation. He even applied for a large amount of funding to help his subordinates get information from those who had been Zhao Yu's classmates. If Zhao Yu has any friends or a lover, Colonel Chu pondered for a moment. Regardless of whether Zhao Yu had ever had a lover, it wouldn't hinder him from using some feminine charm. He refused to believe that in a world with so many stunningly beautiful, talented, and versatile women, they couldn't win over Zhao Yu. He then instructed, also, focus on whether Zhao Yu had any idols, which songs he liked, which celebrities he admired, and what games he enjoyed. We need all the information related to him. Furthermore, visit the headquarters of major social media platforms and dig into Zhao Yu's previous activities. Colonel Chu paused for a moment, as if he had thought of something, and shook his head, saying, "Forget it. Cancel that part. Don't go to those places." Checking Zhao Yu's chat records on social media platforms could cause trouble if the other party found out. After thinking it over, Colonel Chu decided not to proceed with it. By the way, allocate funds to all the schools Zhao Yu attended, including the orphanage where he stayed. How much should we give? 1 to 10 billion for schools and 20 billion for the orphanage. Should we give it in Zhao Yu's name? No, just name the funding under some project. These were all minor matters, but they had one goal, to win Zhao Yu's favor. Also, when you visit Zhao Yu's classmates, besides giving them money, have them sign a confidentiality agreement. Absolutely don't let them leak anything. Colonel Chu paused again and added, it's better not to contact them through phone or the internet. Meet them offline in a place without cameras to discuss matters. He was worried that the network technology on the moon might be more advanced than that of Earth, and they might already be secretly monitoring the world's network and communication. With everything settled, Colonel Chu took out a list and started selecting candidates who could use their feminine charm on Zhao Yu. After selecting for a while and checking a few names, he suddenly thought of something. In the gender column, he removed the female-only filter and changed it to no gender restriction. We still don't know his sexual orientation, so let's select all for now. We'll figure it out later. Have you noticed that the blue moon seems to have stopped rotating? The blue moon was not far from Earth, and on a clear night, you could see its rotation with the naked eye. Some people even used high-powered cameras to record the entire process of its rotation as a commemoration. Due to the lack of wireless internet, the number of internet users had drastically decreased, and only a few people sitting in front of their computers could access the internet. At this moment, discussions started appearing online, with many people observing the blue moon and commenting with others. It's really slow. Previously, it seemed to complete one rotation in just 10 minutes, but now it has taken half an hour to complete one rotation. Are you sure? Or did you miscount? No. I compared it using simulation software. The speed of rotation has actually slowed down. To their surprise, the rotation speed of the blue moon had been gradually decreasing, and eventually, it completely stopped rotating. This exceeded their understanding, and they didn't know what has happened. Does anyone knowledgeable in astronomy know what's going on? Could it be related to the gravity of our Earth? That doesn't seem right. Based on the rotation speed of the blue moon, it would take at least 10,000 years for our Earth's gravity to bring its kinetic energy to zero. The rotation has stopped too abruptly. Even some astronomy enthusiasts on the internet were completely bewildered. Naturally, the Earth Federation discovered this situation. They held a meeting to discuss it and finally concluded that it was the work of extraterrestrial beings on the moon, with the purpose of stopping the rotation of the blue moon for easy access. Colonel Chu had added Zhao Yu as a friend on his holographic smartwatch, but due to the electromagnetic disturbance on Earth, they couldn't establish contact. In practical terms, they lost contact. For the next month, Unless they could lay a network cable from the blue moon to the surface of Earth, they could only rely on manual transmission of messages. However, launching a rocket seemed inappropriate without prior notice, as it might be seen as an attempt to invade the moon. Colonel Chu had overlooked this and was too focused on negotiations, failing to establish an effective means of communication. We can only wait for them to deliver the sample and inform Zhao Yu. We'll set up a communication point for mutual contact, Colonel Chu thought. After the blue moon stopped rotating, Zhao Yu arranged for 60 transport ships to land and, with the tireless work of a massive army of robots, began the construction of the second base. The first structure built was a 1,000 square meter villa on the far side of the blue moon, which would serve as Zhao Yu's residence. Following that, the construction of the nuclear fusion power plant, Blue Moon's laser defense system, and the core technology production lines for 3 products all began simultaneously. Commander, one have an idea? Uncle De projected himself again, just as Zhao Yu finished touring the living area and before he could even sit down. What's your idea? Zhao Yu asked. A little over a month from now, the alien fleet will arrive. We know they are coming with the intention to destroy us, so Earth and us are essentially on the same front. Are you suggesting we ask for help from Earth? Zhao Yu frowned. It's not that. With Earth's level of technology, they won't be able to help us much. Uncle De smiled and continued. Earth is an important base for us to acquire technological points and resources. If we leave it unattended, as soon as the alien fleet arrives, it will be destroyed. Therefore, one proposed building a laser defense system around Earth. Additionally, the alien fleet is unaware of our connection with Earth. We can conceal the moon base when they come. Zhao Yu's base had been built out of virtually nothing but the system alone. This was unimaginable to anyone. Even if the aliens came, they would assume they were together with Earth. That could work, Zhao Yu nodded. The base vehicle was his lifeline, and once it was destroyed, everything would be over. So, within this month, we need to develop the Blue Moon vigorously and expand it to build a military base that can attract the attention of the alien fleet. Even if it gets destroyed in the future, we can rise again, Uncle De suggested. That makes sense. Zhao Yu agreed. Uncle De continued, also, before upgrading the third-generation fusion reactor, there are a few research institutes that need your attention. Which research institutes? Zhao Yu asked. The Absorption Material Research Institute, the Optical Distortion Research Institute, and the Cosmic Ray Research Institute. Uncle De was very serious. In space, we are essentially without any cover, and there is a certain chance of being discovered by civilizations within 100 light-years. So we need to establish a large-scale shield to reduce the risk of detection. They didn't know if there were other civilizations within 100 light-years, but it was better to be cautious and establish the shield as soon as possible. For more than 5 years, Zhao Yu's base had remained deep underground, operating with extreme caution and hardly emitting any signals to space. But now, Earth was emitting too many signals. Upon hearing Uncle Da's use of words to reduce exposure risk, Zhao Yu was puzzled and asked, even after the shield is built, can't we completely prevent exposure? Our technological level is only 1.99, and the shield can only block detection methods below that level. If there are civilizations with higher levels, their detection methods might be beyond our understanding. The current detection methods of the base included optical, electromagnetic, gravitational wave detection, and theoretical derivation. The shield was designed to counter these 4 detection methods. That's true. If we were discovered by a civilization at level 3.0 or higher, one wouldn't be surprised if they had ways to find us, Zhao Yu agreed. After the call ended, the base gradually took shape, and with a hint of excitement, Zhao Yu boarded the spacecraft and headed towards Earth. Meanwhile, at an underground base in Xiadu, after careful consideration, Colonel Chu decided to recall the personnel investigating Zhao Yu. If they decided to hand out confidentiality agreements and financial incentives for finding him, anyone could tell that something was wrong with this Zhao Yu. In this way, if Zhao Yu contacted any of his classmates and they showed a suspicious reaction, it might alert Zhao Yu. Anyone who learned that someone was investigating them would naturally feel displeased. Let's gather information about Zhao Yu's past from less important and gain insights into his background, Colonel Chu thought. Has the sample delivery from Blue Moon arrived yet? No. According to observations from the telescope, There hasn't been any movement from them since they initially stopped rotating. We haven't even seen any spaceships. It's normal not to see any spaceships. Their stealth system is quite advanced. Colonel Chu shook his head. For now, they could only wait for the aliens to make contact. Then she thought of another issue and asked, "Do we only have one copy of our roster?" "We have 2 more copies, but people on it are not as good as the one you saw," Colonel Chu frowned. It wasn't that the people on the roster were unattractive. Nurses, flight attendants, fitness trainers, they were all very attractive. But compared to the tasks they were about to undertake, they were just too ordinary. Moreover, using people from the roster might not be suitable, as it could pose a risk if Zhao Yu found out. The best candidates would be people who are unaware, and they should have a noble and attractive status. 1. In ancient times, it would have been the princesses or noble ladies from various countries who would have been suitable at this time. After considering it, Colonel Chu believed that young ladies from wealthy families in high society were the most suitable candidates. However, they couldn't just force young ladies into seducing Zhao Yu. It had to be voluntary. In a capitalist society, one is driven by profit. So, if we tempt the candidate with some sort of incentive, it might just work. Colonel Chu thought of the upcoming Blue Moon technology products. When the products were launched and the business opportunities emerged, all the offline stores in the district and even globally would be under their local control. I can't control the other districts, but letting he or her become the general agent for the Great Xia district seems like a tempting offer. Blue Moon's products were revolutionary futuristic technologies. They were worth not just trillions, but tens of trillions in market value. After deducting the portion given to Zhao Yu, the remaining amount would be enough to drive the big business tycoons crazy. After pondering for a while, Colonel Chu gradually came up with a plan. When the Blue Moon technology products are advertised and the business opportunities are revealed, they should become anxious. That will be the right time. Knock, knock, knock 1 foot. While he was contemplating, there was a knock on the door.
Come in.
Assistant Little Wong entered the room with a triumphant expression. What's the matter? 11 Colonel Chu glanced at her. Since he scolded this woman earlier, he hadn't seen her for nearly half a day. Now she seemed so happy. He wondered what good news she had encountered. I've obtained Zhao Yu's information. Assistant Little Wong's nostrils seemed to be pointing towards the sky. She had the look of someone who wanted to be praised for her good work. Colonel Chu's eyelid twitched, and he had a foreboding feeling. He said in a deep voice, "Did you go to Chang'an?" "Yes, one didn't even have lunch. One went directly to Chang'an and found a friend who contacted one of Zhao Yu's university classmates. One obtained valuable information." Assistant Little Wong emphasized the words, valuable information. "Who told you to go? Didn't one tell you to stop investigating?" Colonel Chu was speechless. He had just recalled the troops investigating Zhao Yu from Chang'an, and now this woman had run over there again. Seeing her look like she was about to cry with a grievance, Colonel Chu was truly speechless. Her grandfather might be a well-respected figure, but she was really nothing but sloppy. "Forget it. Just tell me what you did in Chang'an, who you met, and how you questioned them. Give me a detailed account." 1 foot. Realizing that she might have caused some trouble, Assistant Little Wong behaved and gave a summary of her experience in Chang'an. After listening, Colonel Chu furrowed his brow. He had ordered most of RHE troops to withdraw because he was afraid that Zhao Yu would meet with his former classmates and arouse suspicion. But unexpectedly, Assistant Xiao Wang had inadvertently found Zhao Yu's ex-girlfriend's college roommate, and she even went with a local police officer, meanwhile even neglecting to mention any confidentiality agreements. If she irritated Zhao Yu, and he spoke ill of Earth in front of RHE aliens, it would be detrimental to their situation. Colonel Chu's gaze gradually turned cold. He said seriously, "I didn't know about this, and neither did Earth or Earth Federation. This was your own personal action, understand?" 11. Assistant Little Wong was frightened and sat on the floor crying. Colonel Chu was dumbfounded. After crying for a while, he finally added, "You heard about the conversation between Zhao Yu and me. You found him mysterious and unique, and your heart raced, so you wanted to investigate things related to him privately." According to his thinking, with this added explanation, she should be able to save her life in the worst-case scenario, unless Unless Xiao Yu really liked men, that would be her end. Come to think of, Assistant Little Wang had to be smart enough to do a job like the one she was doing now. She was intelligent, but sometimes acted impulsively and lacked the experience to handle matters smoothly. Naturally, she understood the meaning behind Colonel Chu's addition to her explanation. She immediately stopped crying, smiled through her tears, and nodded repeatedly. After she left, Colonel Chu began to have a headache again. Xiao Yu was actually dumped by his ex-girlfriend and disappeared after getting drunk that night. With such an experience right before being taken to the moon by aliens, who knew what kind of destructive behavior and thoughts he might develop? If Xiao Yu was starting to have extreme ideas while he was on the moon, it would be troublesome. Colonel Chu sighed repeatedly, feeling deeply worried. Chang'an, we must send someone there to oversee things. He was worried that something might happen. If someone on an official mission went to apprehend Xiao Yu, it would create a major disaster. After all, Xiao Yu's importance was immense, and they couldn't reveal to the public about him. In China, even news about aliens was limited to a few people in the Xia capital. No, in matters concerning Earth's safety, one must go there personally. Colonel Chu decided that it was best for him to go to Chang'an himself. This way, even if there were any unexpected situations, he could handle them promptly. P.S. They didn't allow me to write about internal conflicts. Certain plot details have been removed. Liangpi, rugamo, oil noodles, hot pepper soup. Who wants some apricot kernel eye medicine? 2 for the price of 1. Sweet rice wine. It's a great deal trade for cold water at night. Hold on to your pants and grab some. Vaseline ice cream. We don't have bottles for it. We use paper bags. Under the Chang'an city wall, bustling with activity, people coming and going, the shouts of street vendors filled the air. Feeling the lively atmosphere, Xiao Yu's mood became cheerful. It had been over 5 years, and even with companions like Beiji, Xiao Yu still felt lonely in the late nights. Androids might be able to act according to the persona they were programmed with, but they fell far short in emotional sensitivity compared to humans. Basically, no matter how creative the androids could get, at the end of the day, they still could not do more than what they were told. During his time on the moon, Xiao Yu had also grown tired, frustrated, and distanced himself from it all. But that sense of loneliness couldn't be eliminated. In the end, he could only numb himself. Even if he had seen countless plot lines he created for the androids, he continued to perform alongside Beiji and others, laughing like a dog. He thought that this was how he would live his life. Who would have known that Xiao Tian would bring back 3 astronauts, making Xiao Yu realize that he hadn't gone far, he had just gone from Earth to the moon. When Xiao Yu was deeply immersed in his emotions, suddenly an old man behind him gave him a push. Hey, young man, don't block the way. All right. Xiao Yu happily stepped aside. It was the most interesting voice he had heard in over 5 years, a voice that hadn't been scripted. Fresh, novel, interesting. Xiao Yu would listen to the gossip of 2 old ladies buying groceries near the base of the city wall, and then he would watch the affectionate cuddling of couples in the corners. Ordinary mundane matters of ordinary people seemed very interesting to him. Even though he grew up here, he hadn't been back in 5 years, yet everything felt so familiar and comfortable. Passing by a Liangpi stall, Xiao Yu remembered a time when he and his girlfriend had a meal together and found themselves 1 yuan short when it was time to pay. Fortunately, the owner was kind enough to give them a discount. Young man, do you want Liangpi or rugamo? The owner didn't recognize Xiao Yu and quickly shouted. Pointing to a small stool nearby, he added, have a seat and eat. Here, we have seats. Okay. Just as Xiao Yu was about to sit down, he suddenly remembered a problem. He seemed to have no money. 5 years ago, when he traveled from Earth to the moon, he only brought his mobile phone with him, and he threw that way once he realized his battery was dead. Even if he had brought the phone, it would be useless now as there was no signal, and only cash transactions were possible. Sir, I don't have any money. Can I use this watch to pay? Xiao Yu pointed to the projection touch watch on his wrist. The owner hesitated after looking at the watch. Xiao Yu's watch looked flashy, like a children's watch. After a moment's hesitation, the owner said, Fine. My son has been pestering me to buy him a toy every day. One lave a seat. Xiao Yu smiled and, while taking off the watch, pressed a few keys rhythmically to clear the contact list, and reset the watch to its factory settings. It was just a watch. Consider it as paying back the 1 yuan he didn't pay 6 years ago. After Zhao Yu sat down, he ordered only a portion of liangpi, but the owner gave him an extra rugamo. Sir, do you remember me? 6 years ago, my girlfriend and I used to come here often. One time, we discovered that we were 1 yuan short when it was time to pay, and you let us off. Hey, it was just 1 yuan. Why do you still remember that after all this time? The owner laughed and started chatting with Zhao Yu. After finishing the meal, Zhao Yu thought for a moment and said, Boss, remember to watch the news the day after tomorrow? Watch the news. With a puzzled look on his face, the owner watched as Zhao Yu stood up and left. As he smelled the delicious aromas on both sides of the road, Zhao Yu's mouth watered uncontrollably. Stealing? Robbing? No, that wouldn't do. It was too embarrassing. As the leader of the Moon Base, it would be disgraceful to mooch off others and resort to petty theft. Zhao Yu went through his belongings, and the only valuable items he had left were the waistband-style energy shield and the protective suit made of nanomaterials. Each one of them was priceless to the upper echelons of Earth. Although they meant nothing to him, casually using them to pay for a meal would make him look like a fool. The watch was fine since the owner was a kind-hearted person, but if he approached a different owner and said, Sir, how about I trade this outfit for a meal? He would probably be taken as a lunatic. Zhao Yu looked up at the sky, where 10 warships were hidden, protecting him. After careful consideration, he realized that there was nothing suitable to sell on the warships. If only I had brought some gold back. Zhao Yu could also ask Chu, the colonel, for some money, but he wouldn't want any unnecessary debt that would come to him later. Apart from that, he could wait for his 3 major products to go on sale and exchange some Blue Moon dollars for Great Xia's currency, but that would take some time and couldn't solve the immediate problem. In a secluded area along the way, he beckoned, and a spacecraft landed in front of him. Zhao Yu spoke up, Go to outer space and contact Uncle Da. Ask him to send the prototypes of the 3 major products from the Moon to Earth, and let them start promoting them. The core production line on Blue Moon would take a few more days to be completed, but the value of the watch could be announced by the latest the day after tomorrow. At that time, the Liangpi boss would know how much money his good deed from the past had brought him. After walking for a while, suddenly, he heard a surprised yet uncertain voice from behind him. Zhao Yu. Zhao Yu turned his head when he heard someone calling him. It was a man wearing a suit with a big belly and a chubby face. Who are you? Zhao Yu was confused. He didn't seem to recognize this person in front of him. The man was also taken aback by Zhao Yu's question and wondered if he had mistaken the person. He asked, Did you study at the College of Arts and Sciences? College classmates? Yes, I did. Zhao Yu nodded and said, I graduated in 2018. Well, I knew it. How could I mistake you? I'm Li Wenba. Don't you remember me?
Li Bambu exclaimed. Li Bambu?
Zhao Yu was surprised. An image of a slender figure appeared in his mind. You've gained so much weight now? Li Wenba laughed and said, Hey, after graduating, I joined a tobacco company and started drinking every day. That's why I ended up like this. They were not very close, as there were students from all over the place in their class, and classmates from different regions liked to stick together. Both of them were locals from Chang'an and would occasionally gather for a meal when a wealthy second-generation classmate treated them. Li Wenba looked at Zhao Yu and said with a smile, Where have you been all these years? You haven't attended any class reunions? I went out of town to pursue my career. I just returned recently. Zhao Yu replied casually. Oh. Li Wenba smiled and said, Well, it's quite a coincidence that you came back now. I'm getting married tomorrow. Married? Zhao Yu was startled. It was the first time he had encountered a classmate getting married, so it felt very strange to him. That being said, he was very curious. This trip to Earth for him was a chance to experience all that life on Earth had to offer. He wanted to see and hear everything. If I have the time, I'll come and take a look. Great. I have something to take care of, so I'll go now. If Li Wenba quickly bid farewell and left. Back at home, Li Wenba immediately turned on his computer and logged into the Q group called Youth Fleeting, Timeless Beauty. There were only 8 people in the group, and their locations were all shown as Chang'an. However, there were 8 people online. if at everyone. Do you know who I ran into today? Who did you run into? If it's not your ex-girlfriend, is it? Several socialites replied promptly. Li Wenba smiled and posted, I ran into Zhao Yu. Who's Zhao Yu? Oh, I remember now. That guy who used to work part-time. It seems like he hasn't been in touch with us since graduation. Maybe after graduation, he broke up with Gao Qi and lost contact. I remember when we just graduated, he attended a gathering with Gao Qi. Right at Gao Qi, a girl named Wang Qian said, Zhao Yu? At this moment, Gao Qi, who had become a boss of a cosmetics store, naturally saw the messages in the group. She remembered the days when she was together with Zhao Yu in college. She raised her hand and typed a few words on the keyboard before sending them out. I haven't been in contact with Zhao Yu for a long time. At Wang Qian. Are you pregnant? Damn it. Wang Qian cursed harshly. Although she was roommates with Gao Qi, they never got along, especially after graduation. Gao Qi asked if she was pregnant because Wang Qian had married into a wealthy family. She wasn't the type to get pregnant easily, and she had a hard time being bashed by her mother-in-law for it. The other classmates didn't know and care about the sort of argument that was happening between the two. They continued chatting about Zhao Yu in the group. The group, which had been inactive for months, was unusually active today. Many hidden individuals also emerged. Li Wenba was excited to see that his single comment had sparked such a lively discussion in the group. He quickly added, Hey, I also invited Zhao Yu to attend my wedding tomorrow. How about it? Is he coming? He agreed. At that moment, Wang Qian suddenly spoke up, Today, a colleague came looking for me and asked about Zhao Yu's situation 5 years ago. I suspect that he may have done something wrong, become a fugitive, or committed a crime to come out. At Gao Qi, the colleague also inquired about something related to you. Did you two do anything illegal back then? Gao Qi felt helpless and replied, Stop making baseless accusations. I broke up with Zhao Yu a long time ago. I don't know what he did back then, and no colleague came to me. Gao Qi, think carefully. Did Zhao Yu hide something from you back then? Earth Federation. Received. The prototype from the moon has arrived. Good. Let the representatives from the advertising agencies come over. Since the negotiation ended, the Earth Federation had gathered the elite members of major advertising agencies worldwide. They were on standby, ready to produce advertisements for Blue Moon Technologies' 3 products. These advertising experts had been waiting impatiently for a whole day. Unfortunately, they had not been informed about the specific products they were supposed to promote. When they arrived at the exhibition booth and saw the products they were supposed to work on, they were completely shocked. The magnetic levitation car could hover and fly up to a height of 10,000 meters above the ground without the need for any magnetic tracks. It could reach a maximum speed of kilometers per hour. The projection touch watch allowed users to control everything by simply touching the air, whether it was for gaming, work, or entertainment. The intelligent robots were designed for daily life and could assist employers in handling most tasks. There were also industrial robots capable of replacing 99% of the manual labor in Earth's factories. No matter which product it was, none of them seemed like something Earth was capable of producing. This excited every advertising expert present. Regardless of where the products came from, they believed that once the advertisements aired, there would be a global sensation. This will be a groundbreaking advertising campaign. No, what will truly change the world are these 3 products. At the hotel entrance, the 8 of them chatted for a while until someone pointed to the nearby entrance gate. Look, is that Zhao Yu? Everyone turned to look. Near the entrance gate, a man dressed in casual attire was talking to the security guard, seemingly mentioning that he was here to attend a wedding. Wang Qian glanced at Gao Qi, her lips curled up, and she waved her hand, shouting loudly, Zhao Yu, over here. Zhao Yu turned his head and saw 8 young people standing at the entrance of the hotel, his former classmates. He walked over and smiled. Long time no see. Are you guys waiting for me? Of course. See Gao Qi here? She had her makeups on just for you. Wang Qian said playfully. Gao Qi snorted coldly and said indifferently, Don't be presumptuous. We're waiting for He Jingxian. Zhao Yu naturally didn't believe Wang Qian's words. Someone was curious and asked directly, Zhao Yu, where have you been all these years? You've never attended any class reunions? I went out of town to pursue my career and didn't have time to come back. Oh, so you're afraid of getting drunk and didn't drive here today? Zhao Yu looked up at the sky and smiled. I thought it would be difficult to find parking here, so I didn't drive. Haha, what kind of car do you drive? A classmate asked. A flying car. Zhao Yu answered truthfully, but unfortunately, no one believed him. He's here. He Jingshuan's vehicle. Wang Qian, with sharp eyes, suddenly looked towards the entrance. Zhao Yu turned his head and saw a shining green SUV driving in. He didn't know much about cars or brands, but he thought this car looked more stylish and imposing than the ones he usually saw on the road. The car stopped, and a graceful figure stepped out. Hello, everyone. He Jingxian was one of the few second-generation rich kids in their class. Her family owned a furniture factory, and with the rise of online sales, they had expanded their business beyond local customers to reach major provinces. Although she was known as a rich and beautiful girl in school, she was very kind and often invited local classmates for dinners and gatherings. After some polite greetings, Wang Qian pointed at Zhao Yu with a smile and said, He Jingxian, guess who this is? He Jingxian stared at Zhao Yu for a moment and said, You're Zhao Yu? He Jingxian, long time no see. Zhao Yu greeted her with a smile. Before they could continue chatting, Li Wenba came out and urged them, Let's not stand outside. Let's go in. It's about to start. The group entered the venue, and Li Wenba stood at the entrance as a greeter. On the way, Wang Qian cheerfully said, Zhao Yu, what's your queue number? I'll add you to our group. Zhao Yu thought for a moment and gave her his long-unused queue number. As classmates, they were assigned to the same table. Oh, these candies are nice. 1 foot 11 inches brings some for my little one. How old is your child? 2. 4 years old, at that troublesome age. Fortunately, she's in kindergarten now, so I can have some free time. Which kindergarten does she go to? Little Star Kindergarten. Have you heard of it? It's a prestigious kindergarten, and the tuition is quite expensive. 180K for 1 year. I was actually planning to buy a new car, but raising a child is so expensive. You're right. Although my daughter is only 1 year old, we're already planning to buy a house in a good school district. Which school district are you looking at? Railway Estate. Oh, that's not cheap, and it's close to top-notch schools, right? Yes, we're planning to sell our current house for about 2 million and get another 2 million from both sets of parents, so we'll be able to afford it. Listening to the conversation among his former classmates, Zhao Yu found it quite interesting. If he hadn't traveled to the moon, perhaps he would be discussing mundane topics like everyday life just like them. After chatting for a while, the wedding ceremony began. Unlike others who ate while watching, Zhao Yu didn't touch his chopsticks. He watched the entire wedding process with keen interest. An hour later, the wedding ended, and the guests dispersed. How are you all going back? I came by car. Oh, an Audi A4. Lou is doing well. Hey, I became a junior manager. Nothing worth mentioning? In the usual bragging session, Wang Qian turned to Zhao Yu and asked, Where do you live? Is it far? Many of our classmates drove here. I can give you a ride. She glanced at Gao Qi as she spoke. No need. Zhao Yu replied, It would take 4 to 5 hours to get to my house, but the temporary place I'm staying at is only a 3 to 4 minute drive. No need to trouble you all. Going back to the moon did indeed take over 4 hours, but returning to Blue Moon only took 3 minutes. Upon hearing his response, everyone couldn't help but look down on him. A journey of 4 to 5 hours from Chang'an City was either to a county or a village. It seemed that he hadn't achieved much in these years. As for his temporary residence, everyone unanimously believed it was a rented small house in some urban village. After leaving the hotel, Zhao Yu wandered around the city. Attending this wedding, he felt the experience was quite good. Whether it was the wedding ceremony itself or sitting in the same hall with hundreds of familiar and unfamiliar faces, it all felt very fresh and made him gain some more insight into things.